Okay.
Welcome to PhD with Woman on It, Hack the Future. My name is Beata Young, and today's PhD, Positivity Hack Delivered, will be by our guest, Mary Shank Rockman. Topic: how to connect your brand to your public in an exciting, newsworthy way. Episode 98 starts here. Let me remind you, this is a grassroots community that focuses on women on IT, an inclusive forum of women in technology, startups, and female leaders who are supported by men as well. And I bring heart to that hustle because empathy is my motto, and empathy is critical when you are connecting your brand to your public in an exciting, newsworthy way. Talk about newsworthy, let me tell you what's been happening in the technology world. Congratulations to Vandana Viswanathan, Excellence in Innovation, and UCAR Excellence in Client Services for being acknowledged by Consulting Magazine's Women Leaders in Technology 2023. Congratulations to Sandia's Associate Labs Director for Advanced Science and Technology, Susan Seastrom, recognized among an outstanding group of women in tech by the NM Tech Council's New Mexico Technology Council. Now let's go back to our topic today. If the puppies will let me, just to let you know, we've got a litter of puppies because we've been adopted by a pack of dogs who promptly, less than a month later, delivered puppies. So you may hear a little whimper in the background. Hope it's not going to stop you from listening to our captivating and newsworthy discoveries. Your brand is worth more than ever. After all, you've been around for years and people know you. But as your business grows, so does your potential to reach out to new audiences and customers and to make a big impact on their lives and the world around them. But how do you do it? How can you reach out and connect with a broader audience without losing sight of your objectives? How can you make people talk about your brand? For Positivity Hack Delivered, episode 898, we will explore the strategies and tactics that businesses and brands can use to create compelling and attention-grabbing content that will connect with audience in a meaningful way. We are joined by Mary, Principal and CEO of MSR Communications, one of the nation's top boutique tech PR firms, which has created and executed our award-winning PR, social and digital marketing programs for the world's leading brands since 1999. So, Mary, before we go into the topic of today's discussion, tell me, where in the world are you today?
I'm in San Francisco, California, and we have a beautiful sunny day today after many days of rain. So I'm thrilled to be here and also thrilled to be looking at your beautiful screen in person, Keiko's. So,
Oh,
um,
absolutely. Beautiful by nature, as always. I'm happy to be enjoying this beautiful sunny weather. But just a week ago, you've been quite in a different sphere. You were in Europe with your son. Tell us about that.
yes, I was loving being in Europe. It was wonderful and very happy to have my time with my son and mom-son trip, which is become a tradition.
Speaking about the branding and how cities, for example, are branded. So I wonder if your son's choice for Amsterdam was just because you could smoke weed.
Oh, goodness. No, it just happened to be having a wonderful Van Gogh show and some other great things at the Rijksmuseum. So we were really excited about going. We just took a really wonderful American and international art history class, and they were having a great exhibit that we were able to see, and some of the works that he had studied were specifically in that exhibition.
Excellent. We know that Dutch art's been for centuries present all around the world, and we probably have heard of the girl with the pearl. Right? Is that the correct name of the title? Because I'm still thinking I watched it in Polish, so it's sometimes changed. However, I believe that branding is very critical, whether it is for city, whether it is for person, whether it is for a company. So you've been in the industry since 1999. Tell us, how did branding change over the years?
That's a great question. It's really it's changed a lot in the sense that there are some principles that have still remained the same, but I think what's really been evident over the last 5 years at least, if not longer, but it's that personal connection. It's the authenticity that brands are creating and using to provide information that actually resonates with customers, resonates with consumers, looking at how people are reacting, what their necessary pain points are, and how companies that are marketing themselves can address those issues by resonating with relatable issues and relatable pain points and bringing the value necessary to customers to really solve those problems, but in a very relatable way as opposed to so bits and bytes, which we've seen for so many years in tech.
Well, you reminded me of the fact that things are have to be relatable to audience, and it's really strikes me. For example, when I look at Virgin as a brand and Richard Branson's attitude towards branding, it has changed significantly over the years, because we remember the first girls and in a very skimpy dresses, and now it's more I would say mature in terms of how females are perceived.
Yeah.
What is the role of audience? Is it really to correct, or is it just to hoover whatever is available in terms of marketing and advertising and branding?
I, you know, I think what's interesting is that as women have continued to take leadership roles in marketing, I believe that there has been less of the sexualization, if you will, based on what you're talking about with the skimpy dresses, to more of professional women making a difference and really demonstrating their knowledge and their strengths. Um, let's see, I was just um, I think that there's something really interesting about the development of women in marketing over the years, and I do think that the technology industry has really allowed women to have a platform to demonstrate their creative knowledge and look at how we can be taken seriously in the boardroom. I think there are more VPs of marketing than ever, and I think that that is actually a very positive role model that's being exhibited now versus in years past.
1999. I'm sorry to go back to the story of your experience. Why did you start your agency?
Yeah, I actually kind of fell into it. So initially, I had started my career in advertising, and I was very enamored with the creative side of things. But I also was really interested in account service. So when I moved on to my next area of product marketing, it gave me the skills to really understand what was happening from a marketing perspective, how you market products. And just by happenstance, the company at the time was moving from a more of a marketing perspective into product development and asked me to start their first PR firm, sorry, their first public relations department. And I fell into it and realized it was really my strength and something I really loved to do. So I spent the next 7 years learning all the bits and bytes about what it means to market products through public relations. What are the activities? And it was really at the forefront of tech PR because back then it was very product focused. And as it evolved and I worked for other companies, I really was able to see the value that PR could bring from a corporate perspective as well as the product side. And moving into starting my firm, I wanted to make sure that we looked at what the customer pain points were and how we could bring the brand into uh, really understanding the customer and delivering messages that resonated with them. So the things I had already learned about was how to target customers where and when they were most receptive. And that typically was around the vertical industries and the technology industries, as well as the business press. So each one of those areas became critical to promoting the company that I had been with before I started MSR. And at the time, I realized, it was the dot-com craze and it seemed like a great time to start my own business. So I took on a lot of business at the time and developed a staff really quickly. And we started focusing on enterprise technology and consumer lifestyle and in the areas of health and fitness and some consumer product goods, and as well as looking at how consumer technology evolved from enterprise. So it really gave me an opportunity to explore a variety of topics, not just enterprise technology. And that was one of the reasons that I started the firm, which was there was a lot of opportunity around the time of the dot-com era. There were lots of consumer technologies being developed. And then also enterprise technology was really evolving at the same time. So the combination of the two really allowed me to focus on a variety of categories that I hadn't yet been able to explore. And my team and I really delved into what it meant to customers, how to market directly to them, focusing on areas that really were kind of topics. And that ended up being very successful. So we continued to build the business over the years and have weathered many a storm. And I think some of the things that we focused on in the very beginning still remain true, which is really looking at how you relate brands to what's going on in the global lexicon.
Mm. So one thing I would like to ask you, maybe you could put the volume down or plug in your headset because we can definitely hear some echo, and we want to make sure that our audience understand clearly how to connect and how to drive audiences to connect with your brand. So in the meantime, I'm going to just tell what Mary has sent us. It's very comprehensive plan for connecting with your audience. It's about defining our brand's mission and value proposition to your ecosystem, customers, prospects, partners, investors, employees, influencers. So Mary, it sounds almost like on top of a business plan, you have to write another business plan, business proposition to your customers.
So I think one of the things that's really important is that companies understand who they are as a brand. That's the most important thing, is really understanding who are we? What is our objective? And what's the value we bring to the marketplace? And then looking at taking that next step, it's understanding deeply who the customer is. So relevance around the personas that those customers exemplify, what their pain points are, and what they really need to be successful. So they need to understand who they are as a brand, what they stand for, what their values and mission are, and how they address the pain points of the customer. So once that helps them look at the personas and address the challenges, they're then able to relate with the customer about what it is they need to be successful in their role, whether it's the company, whether it's the actual individual they're selling a product to. And from a business to business perspective, a lot of times people develop the product first without really understanding what the needs are of the customer. And so it can be difficult, especially for technology companies, to identify what it is that they're really trying to bring from a value perspective. And now more than ever, given how competitive every space is in business, no matter the category, um, it's really critical to be able to demonstrate the value that you bring to a customer, because they're sitting in the boardroom having to ask and answer questions around what their spend is for marketing, what it means to deliver the brand out to the world. So understanding them best is going to help a company really directly connect with a brand, and certainly looking at all the pieces around that about how you can educate, how you can deliver your messages, looking at all the things that are going on in the world today, identifying the key trends and how you address them, and also taking it to your next step, which is promoting it. So there's a variety of tactics around how you can actually promote products and services and companies from a thought leadership perspective, looking at the heat seeker topics, identifying those key things that actually make it really interesting. So inserting the company into the dialogue on a global basis around what is actually happening in those spaces that they can address. A lot of times customers of ours like to do surveys or research, and it really shows they have their fingers on the pulse of their specific customer base. So gives them an opportunity to survey others in the market that might be interested in specific topics, and then they can present that research and survey as experts and really demonstrating to a broader market what is necessary for them to understand. So it can be a very creative process.
So let me get it right. It's you cannot, in simple words, you cannot be everything to everybody. You have to narrow down who are you preaching to, and
Exactly.
now the art of how you preach is the real deal here, Mary. So what did you see over the years works best?
So I think one of the things that's really important is, having a creative team to work with who can look through all the issues, who can cite them through all of the research that's out there, who can really address what those customer concerns are, and then stepping back and saying, what are the methods that I can use creatively to deliver our messages, whether that's through pitching the media and addressing the beat reporters that cover the relevant topics around your category, your product, your services, and also looking at can we create content, whether that's social content, whether that's white papers, ebooks, videos, infographics, any kind of activity that brings some type of education to the audience, and then helping elevate the spokespeople who really can address what's happening in the market. So you can have a lot of fun with it, especially on the consumer and consumer technology sides. And even on the enterprise sides, there's a lot of pain points that people are trying to solve, whether it's security, whether it's looking at data and zero trust environments. So it's really identifying what are those things that relate to the customer, and then elevating them with all different kinds of creative angles. So again, social media is a big one, looking at media placements. Also in the enterprise space, it's critical to be able to have analysts that are interested in new technology and can validate their value chain to value place in the value chain and ecosystem. So there's a variety of tools that you can use to promote those brands in ways that are educational to the customer and also are relevant to the broader global lexicon.
So what are some of the tools or the most important tools that you advise your customers to look at?
Well, first of all, I think when you're devising your marketing strategy, it's important to identify, do we have content that actually is resonating? And the important thing to remember there is being able to measure is really critical. So when you set out your key performance indicators, you're able to look at, what do we want to measure? How do we want to look at our content and deliver it to our audiences? So identifying the media outlets where those people read, whether it's a vertical trade or whether it's a business trade, and then also looking at national lifestyle, depending on what's going on in that category. Is that relevant? So really developing creative pitch angles and creative graphics and visuals that can be used to tell the story, and highlighting those with ebooks, or whether it's on your social channels on a regular basis, a comprehensive campaign, whether it's using thought leadership pieces and contributed articles to share your opinions and your expertise. Um, there's just a variety of things. Videos are very popular today, video marketing, and that's a really effective way to get your message out in a very short, kind of pithy way. So there's just a variety of things that you can do. Your website, obviously, blogs are a big one, and you can do guest blogs for other people as well. But to showcase the technology, to showcase the use of your products through customers is a great way to demonstrate the value to others. So there's a variety of creative ways.
A variety of creative ways. However, I think the most important asset here is consistency, and you cannot just make one post and forget about everything. So, Mary, what would be your advice when you're planning a campaign or reaching out to your customers? What would be the great model? How often and when to post or when
Yeah, that's
to
a really
decide?
great question. And I think we get that all the time. It's, really when you are looking at the content that's resonating with your audiences and measuring that through monitoring practices, you can then determine what's working. So, and what channels are working. But it has to be a consistent, ongoing basis. You can't just put a message out there and then expect that it's going to resonate just hitting once. It's got to be a drumbeat, as we call it. So it's an ongoing, consistent platform for discussion, for engagement. And those topics have to come out from that brand on a regular basis. Um, my dog agrees. My apologies. So um, anyway, it's one way to look at, are there methods that people are responding to most? That's why really setting up monitoring is important. And then taking that to the next level of, are there podcasts that resonate with your customers? Are there speaking engagements, events that you can create to bring influencers into? So it's all of the things necessary to highlight around how you continually create a drumbeat. So you're not just putting it out once. And people even say to us, oh, well, don't we need to just put out a press release? No, not necessarily. That could be one of the methods, but it's certainly not the only method. And to only put out one press release is not enough. So it's important to continue it with ongoing activities. So perhaps once a month, a press release, but then every week thereafter, you're pitching the media, you're pitching the analysts, you're identifying any issues that come out in the press that you might be able to respond to, whether that's through a blog post or a customer email letter or even an infographic about what's happening in space. So it's got to be an ongoing, consistent drumbeat strategy as opposed to just a one-time scattershot approach.
Mary, with your experience, who would you say had the most successful story you could share with us today? Which brand?
So I would say Airbnb. We actually launched Airbnb back in 2008, and they've This was an incredible experience for us. They were at their very early stage. They literally were three guys living in a loft, Brian and Nate and their other co-founder. And they came to us and said, we have this idea. And at first I was kind of skeptical because there were some other competitors out there. But what they did was develop a really sound platform for people to use worldwide. And so when we started with them, they probably had 100 listings for homes that people could rent or rooms people could rent. And when we launched them, or after we launched them, there were thousands all over the world. And the way that we did that was we discovered that there were a lot of people that had wanted to go to the Democratic National Convention in Colorado, but they had already announced that it was unfortunate they didn't have enough hotel space for people to come and see the conference. And so we said to the team, hey, this is a great idea. Here's a chance for us to launch you properly and demonstrate the value of Airbnb. Before we knew it, we had them on every television station in Denver and nationwide. We had them on the covers of every magazine and daily newspaper that you could possibly imagine. And it became this really incredible way for people to understand I don't have to stay in a hotel if I'm going to a conference or if I'm going to visit friends or if I'm just taking a trip. I can actually stay in someone's home. And so I think that was one of our top successes in the last 23 years. There have been so many. The Myers-Briggs is another great example. The personality assessments company has been a client of ours for 15 years. I'm very proud of that. And the work that we have done has been really remarkable in the sense that it's built the brand awareness for their tools and demonstrated to the world that it's not just about one tool, but understanding yourself, having that self-awareness as you develop your leadership skills, you're able to collaborate better, you're able to build teams and really understand what it means to be a great communicator with a variety of different personality types. So I'd say everything we've done for them, from video work to we just launched a Medium magazine, to their podcast that they recently launched, to all the outreach that we do on a daily basis for that company has really elevated them to be thought leaders in workforce development, individual development, and across the board, just really being a thought leader.
uh, Difficult to understand the complexity of how to find that niche or how to find that need and feel that need. So what was your strategy? How to reach out to these conference organizers, or was it just an article? How did you do it?
For Myers-Briggs, it's been a variety of activities. We recognize that they are being used by the Fortune 1000 companies, all the top, about 80% of them, for workforce development. What that said to our team was, this is a company that has real value, brings tremendous value to those that are in the executive leadership training courses and those that are being trained for personal development as well as leadership, managerial roles, those kinds of things. And so we really took a strong approach in the vertical markets around workforce development. There's an entire set of media that are just focused on HR, training, learning, and professional development. So we have focused a lot of our efforts on those activities. And then on top of that, we've looked at how does the Myers-Briggs itself benefit individuals in a variety of ways in their lives, whether that's personal relationships, whether that's communication with their significant others, whether it's understanding what type of career would be best for, say, a high schooler or a college student as they're graduating. So leveraging the value that they bring and then looking at the particular markets and saying, okay, if we want to reach consumers, we want to reach young professional women, we would target this type of outlet. If we want to look at professional boomers, for example, where would we go to target them? So we would really focus on who we're trying to target, who the target audience is, and understand all the influencers around them. So once you have a broad understanding of where your customers are, what they're reading, what's influencing them, who's influencing them, you can develop a very sound strategy for targeting them in those specific areas. Sometimes it's an executive that has a job responsibility in a particular category that needs to continue to develop their leadership skills. Oftentimes it's somebody that's dealing with conflict or resolution or dealing with developing teams. So wherever those folks are and what is targeting them for reading, it could be the Wall Street Journal, it could be Training Magazine, it could be CEO Magazine, it could be a variety of things. It could also be Vogue or Marie Claire. So you're looking at who are the audiences we're trying to target today and what do they read? Who influences them? What podcasts do they listen to? What magazines do they read that are glossy, lifestyle? So it's understanding the customer thoroughly, as well as the outlets and those influencers that really address the issues that those people are looking to find solutions to.
You bring the solutions in a creative way through discussing the ideas internally and externally as well, I suppose. And speaking of discussing ideas and discussing problems to solve, we have a question from Trevor Turner. If a company is going through a crisis situation, how should they handle it from a PR and communications perspective? And my follow-up question is it a threat or an opportunity?
That is a great question, and it is one that my firm is absolutely adept at and is very familiar with. So one of the questions I know you had asked me before is, how do I solve problems? And crisis situations are very similar to an everyday problem, depending on the magnitude. We know some are greater challenges than others, but I always encourage everyone to step back before they respond. Take a deep breath and really think through the details of that situation. What has happened? How has it happened? Who's involved? And how do we take it from there to let the audience know that they are taking it seriously, that they are investigating the situation? And it's important to really think through those details. Certainly from a messaging standpoint, that's number one. But you never want to rush to say anything until you actually have all the facts. So that's number one. Once you have all the facts, it's understanding, well, how will this impact our audiences? And that goes from employees to partners, to customers, to investors, to shareholders, anyone who is involved in the ecosystem of the customer, of our client, essentially. And so to step back, to think through what it would mean to them if they were on the receiving end of your message is the most critical thing. And then mapping out a timeline so that their audiences understand in 2 days, we will have more information for you. Here's what we know so far. We will get back to you with an update on X date, and being very straightforward about that. And then obviously maintaining a tight hold on who is speaking about the crisis, who is going to be the spokesperson, and who needs to be notified immediately about the situation. So training that person to really think through those messages, to stay on message, and to say what is necessary at the time. And until you've got the rest of the information, you can't paint the picture. So it's really taking a step back, I think, is number one key, and then defining what it means to the person that hears the messages. And then a step further, it's communicating those messages and responding to requests and looking at how you can handle it such that they feel comfortable that you are delivering honest, authentic information and that you take the situation very seriously.
So to use it as an opportunity, you definitely need to take a step back and see what resonates with your clients and how it will impact you, as you rightly pinpointed. However, as a founder, how true and honest should you be?
So
What I mean here, for example, Mary, we know that not everybody is open, for example, to LGBTQT, and however, we know that majority of people recognize LGBTQT communities worldwide. So, is it a matter of changing the founder's perspective, or is it a matter of being true to yourself and being like, let's give an example, Donald Trump? Go with your gut feeling.
great question. I don't I don't know if it's necessarily only from the founder perspective. I think in a situation that is heated, or a very specific situation, you want to take a look at it from all angles. Certainly, if there's a founder that has run into some issues, um, then that person needs to think very clearly about their role and how they communicate their role in the situation. Oftentimes, if it involves someone personally, there will be a recommendation to do what we call refocus the spotlight. So, in other words, that person can kind of wait on the sidelines and have the next executive spokesperson kind of buffer the situation by being the face of the message. And so that's a tactic that's often used. Um, I will say, as much as I'm not a fan, the former president is very good at repeating the message and identifying the rhetoric that resonates with his audience. And you have to do that when you're communicating, especially when you're communicating a solution to a problem that may have arisen.
Mm. When you're communicating a solution, you have to repeat yourself and make sure that the message is clear and understandable
Very.
to everybody.
Yeah.
Now, let's go back to communication and that resonates with your audience. You also mentioned in your pinpoints conducting audit of your content across all your marketing channels. Tell us, how can it be done? Do you need a team of outsourcing company, or can you do it internally?
That's a great question. Typically, it is advised to work with a company like ours, like MSR, that actually has expertise in helping companies resolve crises. But what we typically do when we are working with a client that is in a crisis situation, we work extremely collaboratively with their senior most executives and their PR teams, and we train them on how to respond. What are the messages we recommend? Here's the actual situation around the situation, if you will. What does the landscape look like? What are we walking into? And how do we address your community? So sometimes that takes a third party looking in to be able to be objective as opposed to subjective. And oftentimes in crisis situations, that is more effective than having somebody who's so close to the situation that it's difficult to be objective. So I can come in and look from a 3,000-foot level. This is what's happening. Here's how we need to address it. And here's who we need to leverage as that spokesperson. Sometimes they will have people be the spokesperson for them, depending on the significance of the situation and what that means. So, if it's a really significant, unfortunate situation, oftentimes it is beneficial to have the PR person speak on their behalf so that it does not put a face on a really unfortunate situation. Other times, it's the CEO or the executive in charge of that division, company, what have you. And it's important for them to communicate with their audiences, to share what has happened, and to give their audiences a map of when they can expect to learn more and how the resolution will play out. So it can go both ways. You can do it internally for sure, but I always advise if there's a crisis situation and it's a company or a set of individuals, leaders, whomever, that have not been through a real crisis, it's advisable to work with an outside firm that does understand what crises mean. Because they are very complex and they do require a lot of um, objective opinion as opposed to being so close and emotionally driven by the situation.
Now, what do you consider to be the most important skill in brand communication, Mary?
Um,
I mean, as a founder, what skills are most important? Because
Thank
I,
you.
for example, me, when I see some of the, Gen Z or, other generations, how they perceive the word, it really baffles me because I see no empathy in their communication.
Yes.
And it's all about
Yeah.
me, myself, and I.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying and asking. I think the most important things when you are focused on um, leadership roles in communication, number one is definitely empathy. It's very important to be empathetic about the teams and the situations. Um, and I think listening is probably the most important. So I'd say having an empathetic ear, listening, and really hearing what you're being told is most critical. And then again, stepping back, taking a deep breath, listening through it, thinking through it with an empathetic ear, and then responding. So with any situation about communications, whether it's positive, negative, or neutral, you really do need to listen as thoroughly as possible and understand the situation and not be afraid to ask questions if it's not clear. And then show empathy in that and authenticity in that response. So I'd say those are two of the most important things to think about listening and having empathy.
In terms of communication and putting your media out there in the digital world, it is, as you said, important to closely monitor what's happening in the industry, what's trending globally, and what themes and topics are being discussed that you can associate with your brand. How not to lose focus on your call to action?
Yeah, that's again a great question. I think one of the most important things to do is to really do your homework. I mean, I think the thing about PR and communications externally and marketing as well is really understanding what's happening around you. It's invaluable to do your homework, do your research, and especially if you're trying to target specific media, they expect you to know what they're writing about, what they're covering regularly, and what's happening in that specific space. So doing as much research, looking at analyst reports, looking at daily newspapers and anything online, listening to podcasts, blog posts. There's a lot of opportunity to really educate yourself about what's happening. And so, in order to find those kind of what we call heat seeker topics and associate your brand with what's trending, is understanding the landscape. And once you do, you can hook into a couple of great topics. I'll give you a perfect example. We are working deeply now in ChatGPT and AI, and several of our clients are producing products and services around AI. And of course, ChatGPT is influencing this right now. So as we looked at what their technology is doing specifically, we leveraged that topic to be something that all of the executives could speak to. So we've had executives on television, we've had executives talking to all the major news wires, and all of the major outlets, both in technology and business, talking about the impact of AI, talking about the impact of ChatGPT, and what this means for the future of business, what it means for the future of education, and personal. So it's a really interesting topic, and we recognize that several of our clients have leadership here and can speak authoritatively. So we've been able to pitch them to top tier targets about what this means for the future. So it's been really successful. And I think that's an example of how you can find a topic that starts trending and recognize you have clients or your company touches that ecosystem somehow. And it's a great way to insert the company and the thought leader into the dialogue, offering them up as expert, really understanding what that technology means, what the future means because of it. So,
Now,
great
Mary,
example.
aren't you afraid of ChatGPT
No,
replacing you?
oh no, I'm not. Actually, it's interesting. So I just had this conversation with the boutique network that MSR belongs to called PR Boutiques International, and we have about 40 firms that are boutique agencies around the world. And we just had a very lengthy conversation about this. But based on what my clients have shared with us and what we've learned from the industry today, is that authenticity is really critical. And see um, you can see what it is that is taking place and determine whether or not it's authentic. And there's even technology being developed um, to identify whether something's been written by ChatGPT or not. And this is a critical point for the educational institutions because it would be a way for students to start turning in writing works that were not written by them. And it is an opportunity for the market to take on an ethical perspective and make sure that they are not encouraging fraudulence or plagiarism of any kind. And so this is an issue. It is one that I believe a lot of companies are thinking about today. And they're also looking for ways that they can make sure there are guardrails put around ChatGPT and other technologies or similar technologies so that it doesn't hinge on the human. It still is critical to the process.
Mary, as we are going towards the end of our discussion, I often talk about the importance of female role models in the world of technology and in business overall. As a perfect role model, I would like to ask you, what are the key takeaways for us to become a role model for generations, for male as well?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think that there are some really important values that women bring to the workforce. I have been really, blessed to be given some great leadership opportunities. And one of the things that I think is most important is being your authentic self, not being afraid because you're sitting at the table with men. Um, you you can speak your mind. You can offer up opinions. It's important to do your homework, have your backup, and make strategic recommendations. So I think that's one thing that I was really lucky to have kind of stumbled into in the very beginning of my career, and had a mentor who was a very strong woman and really showed me that you have to take responsibility for yourself and your opinions and back them up with facts and analytics, and be able to share those opinions authoritatively. And so I have done that. I've made a practice of doing that my whole career. And while I'm sure that some people find it very straightforward, others really appreciate it. And I know that when clients hire us, they're looking for strategy, they're looking for counsel. And in order for me to be able to provide that, I need to be able to come to them with very strategic initiatives and the backup to support those ideas. So I think I have to be my authentic self in order to model and be a role model for others. And I don't believe I would be myself if I kind of sat quietly and ever offered an opinion because I know my clients are paying me to give one. So I think in any situation, leadership development is critical. I encourage all women to take courses. There are many of them that you can choose to take. I'd say the Myers-Briggs offers a lot of really great leadership development. And I've benefited from taking many of those types of courses and personality assessments where I can understand how I can model, uh, become a role model for others in the workforce. So I think
That's
I think that
that lies
authenticity is key.
absolutely, that lies beautifully into our next question about pandemic is over and you could travel with any person in the world to any place in the world. Who would you
Any
choose?
place in the world.
Yes,
Um,
why not?
Goodness,
Who would you choose?
my favorite place is Greece. I absolutely love it. If you put me on a boat tomorrow, I'd be thrilled.
Okay, on a yacht of Onassis or more humble
Yeah,
surroundings?
yeah, I love it. Yeah, I
Okay, and who would you choose as your
who would I choose?
number one person you would like to
It's
sit down
interesting.
and talk
My
to?
grandmother would be the first, probably because she was a civil rights activist and she really fought for civil rights. She also lost her first job in real estate for trying to sell a home to an African American couple. And back then that wasn't allowed. And so that really instilled in her this fire to fight for human rights. And whether or not that jeopardized her position or any other role in the community, she really believed that you have to stand up for yourself and others to create a cohesive community. And she instilled that in me for sure. I've had many conversations with her, but I wish I could have more. She also started the first chapter of League of American Voters in the state of Oregon, and she hosted Martin Luther King at her table for their inaugural luncheon. So if I could go back in time to that day, I would have loved to have been a part of it. Um, but as far as modern day, I think that Madeleine Albright is a wonderful role model, and I would have loved to have had more time with her. I had the pleasure of meeting her with her daughter, whom I know, Katie Albright. And I wish that I could have spent more time talking to her about her experiences. Not only did she, survive Nazi war camps and then Russian persecution, she also then, of course, became uh, the very first Secretary of State and female, for that matter. It's just so admirable. So I have her book of pins, and it's a beautiful book that shows the collection of things that she has from all around the world and her travels in diplomacy. I would love to know more about them. It just sparks such interesting ideas and creativity. So I'd say Madeleine Albright would be my first choice to meet with again.
Would you choose also as your life lesson quote any of Madeleine Albright, or do you have something else?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Life lesson quote. What would be your life lesson
Oh,
quote?
I have something else. My favorite quote, I think, really demonstrates exactly what I think of when I think about how I can sort of, do what I do every day and then recognize that not every day is going to be, the sunny, bright, beautiful day, but um, that is, I will love the light for it shows me the way, and yet I will endure the darkness for it shows me the stars. And I think this quote is so uplifting because we can all appreciate the simple things in life, but the challenges can often lead to unexpected magical moments and great learnings. And so I like the idea that, you can actually have the simple things, but then when things get difficult, if you can actually see the stars through the dark sky, you can learn a lot. And I think it's a really impressive quote by Mendino.
I love that quotation because, as we know, during the night when you see the stars, you can find a way as well.
Yes.
That's been magnificent discussion with Mary Shank Rockman. Mary, just last question today. What is your number one book you wish you read before you started your career?
Well, I wish when I was starting out that I had had Crossing the Chasm. It did come into the workforce not long after I had started doing PR, but it is a playbook for marketers, and it still has a tremendous amount of resonance today. So that's Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore. He's had several updates to it, but everything that he started out talking about with regard to the foundation of marketing and how you cross that chasm into growing and growth oriented um, mindset for companies is still incredibly relevant and certainly should be on everyone's reading list as they come into the industry, specifically tech. He really ties it all together. So it's something I wish I had seen very, very early on. It probably would have given me a lot more insight into brand marketing, but I was thrilled to receive it when I did.
Mary, it's been a pleasure to host you today for our 98th episode, How to Connect Your Brand in a Meaningful Way. I have to say that I like this quote that is a great summary for today's discussion. It took me quite a long time to develop a voice, and now that I have it, I am not going to be silent, as Madeleine Albright said. To stay updated and ensure you never miss a positivity hack delivered, follow Woman on IT and turn on notifications to be alerted once a video has been released. Thank you very much for our comments from Trevor Turner and from IPO Vid. Patrick says, fabulous PhD as always. Thank you, ladies. Happy Easter, happy
Thank you very
Passover,
much.
happy diversity in
Thank
St.
you so
Cali.
very much. This was a wonderful conversation, and I really appreciate the honor of being here today and the time. So I look forward to continuing following on PhD and number 99, whenever that will be.
Absolutely. Well, next week we are joining for our next episode. We are going to talk with Women Tech Makers Ambassadors about daring to be. So that lies in beautifully with today's topic as well. And Mary, a role model for many females to come. As always, our positivity quote comes from positive thinking only and goes, look for something positive in each day. Even if some days you have to look a little harder, even if some days it's so dark you only see the stars. If you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude, as Maya Angelou says. Thank you so much for our lovely audience, for our great production team, Fernando, Jamil, Janella, and Patrick. Have a happy Easter, Passover, diversity, whatever in the word tickles
Thank you
your
so much.
word. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you so much.